Hi, Frida. Hello, hello. I'm just waiting for some folks to trickle in here. Let's see. Dun, 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 dun. Frida, if you're... Oh, okay. Try again. How
Oh,
are you today?
uh, very good.
Nice. Yeah, we're just waiting for to see if anybody else trickles in, but we'll see what happens. How's everything going with you?
Um, Everything's fine. I'm sorry to say this, but I have been how to say this? The English struggle. Uh, I haven't really done the homework, but today I'm gonna catch on.
Nice. You know what? That's totally cool. It happens. I know that we're all working professionals, and so, it's hard to, especially with something where like it's a lot on your own time. At my company right now, we're kind of doing a startup. So,
Ooh,
yeah, we've been innovating this new learning platform. And so I totally understand how crazy things can be because I've been more busy this year than I feel like I've ever been. So, but the big idea is just like do what you can when you can do it. And then in mid-June, that's when everything is due. So, you have a little bit of grace period to be able to get it done. And then whenever you do hand stuff in, I'll be able to give you some feedback on it. So, um,
okay.
yeah, it should be good. No problem. So, how are things going, with your life and work and all of that stuff?
Uh, well, all good. I'm currently actually just doing some. Um, I'm waiting for. My plan is to get a master's degree, so I'm
Nice.
currently waiting for results and everything. I applied to some universities abroad, and I'm waiting for the scholarship results. So I'm kind of nervous about
Yeah,
that
yeah,
lately. So I think that has been like keeping my mind busy a
yeah.
lot.
I know what that's like. I have a son who's a senior in high school. So this year we've been applying for colleges and scholarships and all of that stuff. And it's been pretty competitive.
It is.
It's hard because you don't realize, that when you are looking at all the different schools, like your ability to afford the school has an impact on, where you go. And so it comes to a point where, you apply to all these places and all these programs, and then, you have to make pretty tough choices. So
Yes.
see where you end up. What program are you pursuing?
I want to do data science.
Ooh, wonderful. Well, yeah, I forget that you're like right in my zone with stuff that you're interested in. So
Yes.
that's really cool. Yeah, at my company, I rely on our data science team more than anyone else. Like just the insights and the overview and, the understanding of so many different, parts and elements of the business. And it's exciting. So you must be very smart.
Thank you.
That's great. Good morning, Carmen. How are you?
Hi.
Good to see you. Welcome, welcome. Well, here we are. We'll see if anybody kind of drifts in. I'll keep my eye on the virtual front door of the class and we'll see who we get, but week 3 is what we're in now. I've sent out an email this morning with everybody's class partners. And so the purpose of the class partners is to have someone to pitch your work to. So you'll use whatever you've developed over the last several weeks. Some of us, maybe we only have a lean canvas that we're going to be pitching by the time we have an opportunity to meet with our partners. Some of us might have our entire package of homework assignments, but just see what you have and then um, have an opportunity to practice talking about your project. And the one thing I have to say is that sometimes it's really hard to meet with your class partner because they're from a different country, a different time zone, whatever. So, in that case, it's absolutely fine with me if you guys pitch to a partner, a friend, a colleague, a mentor, a parent, a grandparent, anybody that can actually give you really good feedback. And I find people that don't really understand anything about the project that you're working in or even the field of social or environmental impact are actually the best to work with because they help you to simplify and really distill how you talk about the project that you're doing. And that way you can be so much more connective with a broad range of audiences, which is really, really helpful. So, for me, I used to always pitch stuff to my dad, who I'd say is probably like my hardest critic. And he'd be like, "What are you talking about? I have no interest. You lost me." And he would help me to distill things. And then also just kind of hearing how other people hear you describing your project helps to helps to make you be able to rephrase what you're talking about in more simple terms because the more deep we get into the types of work that we're doing, the more we start to talk and speak in the vernacular or the language of the field that we're in. And sometimes that's not connective to a lot of the different funders or purchasers or customers that you might be working with. So at any rate, someone that can give you good feedback is always good. And then, as part of your final project, you'll be asked to give a small reflection on what that experience was like. So, it's really fun if you can meet with a class member, mostly because what we're really endeavoring to do here is to create a community of practice and people that we can rely on outside of the course. So, for example, I've had students that have continued to connect and work together, actually, in the different projects and organizations and fields that they've been in. People that you can call and say, "Hey, what do you think about this?" Or "Is this a crazy idea?" Or "Have you worked with this funder before?" I've had students that have traveled along with other students to different project areas. And even here in the center, we've had students that have gotten married. So that's pretty funny too. So you never know what's going to happen when you cultivate and create these wonderful connections with like-minded individuals who have chosen this very difficult, rigorous, crazy, and intense field that we've all chosen, which is the world of impact. So let's talk about maybe just do a little like 2-word check-in with you guys. I'd say choose 2 words that kind of explain how you're feeling today and kind of what, I don't know, whatever you want to share about, but just 2 words, and you don't have to really give it an explanation if you don't want to. But if you want to kind of explain it a little bit, you can too. I would say today I'm feeling very inspired. I spent the morning just kind of puddling around on my computer and listened to music while I took a shower and got ready for the day, which is just really soothing to my soul. So inspired, and I'd also say grounded because I have put work into being grounded. Everything is crazy in the world right now. And so being able to kind of breathe through certain moments. My work world is crazy, like I was telling Frida, everything's insane. So I took some time last night to just sit outside and stare at a tree and do some breathing and did that while I went to sleep this morning. And I woke up today feeling really refreshed. So inspired and grounded. Frida, I see you responded in the chat, but I'd love to hear from you if you want to talk about it on the course or in the live session.
Sure. So it's 10 a.m. here, so I am kind of starting my day as well. I just had my cup of coffee, and I'm right here at the class, so I'm really inspired to do the work on the on the diploma, but also some other things that actually involves data science.
Good. Um, Wonderful. And Carmen, what about you?
Sorry, I had problems with my internet. Can you repeat, please, the
Oh,
question?
sure. Yeah, we're just doing a little check-in. So I was asking everyone to choose two words just to describe how they were feeling today.
Okay. Well, I'm happy because I received great news in the morning, and also I think I'm energized. Okay, English is my second language, so sorry, but I want to say that I feel with a lot of energy because I went to the gym in the morning.
Woo!
So yes,
Wonderful. Well, congratulations and good job having a solid start to your day. So before we jump in too much, do you guys have any questions about the content or the assignment so far? Okay.
Oh, good.
Okay, good. Carmen, any questions or comments about the assignment so far?
no, not really.
Okay, good. All right. So the first week we worked on the Lean Canvas, and I wanted to share just a quick example of a student who I thought did a really, really good job with this. This is from my last session. It's not from our current session, but I like this one a lot. So I thought I would just kind of go through this really fast and then go over some of the stuff that we're working on this week. And then if you guys had any questions or anything came up for you, just stop me because you know how I can just talk and talk and talk forever. So, um, for this specific student, they're working in Nicaragua and it was really about working with families and empowering communities. So I just wanted to go through all the different elements of the Lean Canvas and show you guys why I thought that this was a good example. And this is an early stage example. You know, when we first start working with the Canvas, we kind of just give the broad overview of it, but then as we get a little bit deeper with the work that we're doing, we're able to kind of bring depth to it. And then the cool thing about this is like it's a back of the napkin kind of quick explanation of our project and all the different elements. So it provides us with a springboard for being able to write proposals or apply for different grants. But it also really helps for us to have clear communication points with our work team so that we can say, okay, this is how we're all talking about the work that we're doing, and this is the language that we're using. These are the goals of the project. So everybody has alignment, and it's a great tool to use in a brainstorming session so that everybody can participate and you can make it stronger because you know, obviously the work of one person is only so strong, but if you include more people from your team, more outside advisory, then you can only get stronger and stronger. Also sharing with people that are also doing similar projects in similar geographical areas or similar projects in other geographical areas, which we encounter a lot in this course. It helps you to really refine where you're at. So, in this case, you know, we don't have a lot of space on the canvas, and often, you know, if we're just jotting stuff down, we don't have all the room that we would like to have. So they do get kind of chunky, and that's when you kind of have to start working on other assets and documents like 2-pagers, which we'll be doing next week. But so far, this person working in Nicaragua is working in Granada City and the Santa Ana rural area. And essentially, she's gone over the direct issues that the women in the community are having, such as diet, education, and socialization of the children within the community. And also, they have issues where the women have experienced domestic violence. There's a lack of control over reproductive rights, which a lot of us are dealing with in the world nowadays. Also, the political situation in Nicaragua and economic situation, which she does a good job of quickly describing so that you can really, really understand. And the end problem here, which is that a lot of people end up living the community or leaving the community and not staying there. So, you're not having individuals who are starting new businesses or going and getting educated and coming back to their community and helping that community to continue on a path of economic liberation or social liberation. So, yeah, I think that's like a good high level overview. And as I read through it as a potential funder, even though I don't know very much about Nicaragua and I don't know much about the experience or context where this work is happening, I'm able to really quickly connect with what's going on. In the next section, in the customer segment section, she does a good job of saying who she's connecting with, and most importantly, she's also mentioned who is going to fund the project, which is really important here because you want to be thinking about things from both levels. Now, sometimes we can create one canvas that's just specifically focused at the beneficiaries of the work that we're doing or our community partners where we're working, and then one canvas for the funders. But over the years, I've found that merging the two into one canvas really makes the most sense because who needs all these extra pieces of paper, essentially, and documents, because we do get very document heavy. So really, really good high-level overview and understanding of both who the partners, community partners, or beneficiaries might be here with this work, and also thinking about the funders. Third, we're working on the unique value proposition, our UVP. So I really like the statement that is used here. I feel like it's empowering. I feel like it's inspirational. And I think everybody within this organization can probably align with what is being said here. So essentially, it's that the group, Adanic, can break the cycle of poverty by touching a family at the time with a holistic approach to their need, willingness, and belief to create sustainable improvements that can build protection to empower the next generations and communities to step up for their future. So, it's a really high impact statement that says a lot about what the vision of this organization is. I really like it. These UVPs are something that we continue to develop, and development of those can come really seamlessly through our pitching exercises or sharing with outside partners, because I've actually developed UVPs on my own by sharing about my work and then having someone repeat back to me what they thought I was saying I was doing. And I was like, that's brilliant. That's exactly, kind of what I want to say and how I connect to it. Fourth, we have the solution, and the solution, obviously is always a moving target. The more depth we bring to our understanding of the problem, the better our solution gets. But at this point, we're saying the mothers cannot access technical training, soft skill training, or traditional loans. Three main threads here that we know then that the program is going to illuminate. And the loans are not available without presenting significant assets for collateral, big issue all around in the global south and elsewhere. And traditionally, mothers do not own their, such assets for collateral. Therefore, it's challenging for them to get seed capital and start their businesses, and supplemental capital help them to continue to grow. So we know from reading the solution statement, it's very broad and it's not, being really definitive about the specific programming, which is good because we need to design the programs and our solutions along with those who, and alongside, or actually just create the conditions for people to create the solution themselves. In the best case scenario, but we are looking at very specific threads here, which is around technical training, soft skills training, and providing seed capital. So we can kind of get a sense of what these different programs for the solution are going to look like. I think they're fantastic. Economic liberation is really the foreground for all the many solutions for many, many problems that communities face. Fifth, our unfair advantage. Now, with our unfair advantage, it's very hard to know this sometimes. You know, sometimes it takes you a really long time to understand really what's so special about me and the project that I'm doing. So it's okay if you guys don't know what this is yet. This is something that we continue to develop. And sometimes it takes a little bit of self-love, you know, to be able to write something like this down, because what you're really shining a light on is why are you the one? Why is your organization the one that is best suited to do this specific work that you've highlighted on the canvas? So in this case, they're pointing to long-term relationship with many, many women within the community. Very, very important because there's a sense of deep empathy with those that are experiencing the issues. Because, as she so aptly states here, the women firsthand know their life, their dreams, and their challenges. So I really, really like how the unfair advantage really underpins the fact that the solutions for these women are really driven by these women and what their real needs are. In terms of on the bottom here, number 6, the revenue streams, there's some good threads here: fees for selling portraits, individual donations, foundation grants, small events for fundraising, and even a GoFundMe yearly event. Really, really important for your revenue streams to have multiple different revenue streams. Diversity is really important here. We can't rely on one bucket. You know, you can't rely on one funder to fund you, or, you know, oftentimes when we're creating products, you know, it's really hard to rely on one thing to bring in all of the funding that you need to sustain your organization until the problem is solved, hopefully. So one thing to think about is really always consider where additional revenue could come from. As you'll remember from the recorded sessions, uh, sometimes we can be really entrepreneurial about what those potential revenue streams might be. Maybe we're renting out, maybe we have a big office and we're renting out some space to someone, or we're doing, you know, allowing a group to use our area, and from that we're getting some additional income. So where it doesn't take anything away from the organization itself, but you're able to earn additional income, always kind of be scrappy and think about what you might be able to do. For number 7, the cost structure, I like this on the canvas because it actually gives dollar figures. This week's work, week 3, is all about our budgets. So, you know, we can get really into the finite details of how we've costed all of the elements of our budget. But I like this on the canvas because it just, for me as a funder, when I first look at a project, it's important for me to know the price tag. And so if I know exactly how much you're coming to me to ask for, and I know how much your entire project costs and what my part in it, my percentage of it might be, it's a lot easier for me to see if that's achievable for whatever funds that I have earmarked for supporting different impact projects. So, you know, as hard as it is to really understand the cost of things, it's important to kind of have that like ballpark figure. Is that going to change? Yeah, it's going to change. I mean, market shift, your understanding the problem gets a little bit deeper. Your access to different resources or tools or assets might change. So because of that, you know, we know that our budgets aren't always high fidelity, but if we're building very, very strong relationships with our different funders, and we have a good sense of kind of what our costs are and why we have those specific costs, of budget explanation, then our funders can feel a lot more comfortable when we come to them and say, I know that we've asked for this much money, this market changed for these specific supplies. Now it's going to cost more money. And, they can, funders understand when those shifts happen. Also, around timelines, sometimes things end up taking longer than what we had planned. So, as long as we have a really good relationship with our funder, even if they can't give us more funding, and oftentimes that's the case, but sometimes it's not. At least we can bring them along as we're working through the project and share with them what we're learning, what mistakes and missteps we've made, how different things have shifted and impacted how we've costed things, what we've had to do, have we had to cut out a part of the program because something else was more expensive? Did we have to change our plan? Or were we able to bring in additional funding from somewhere else? Those types of things are always considerations. And it's far better to be very transparent with a funder, purchaser, donor, investor about these different shifts than it would ever be to just leave them out or not tell them. So, as long as you can continue to report and build your relationship, and all of this is in complete alignment with building trust and building belonging with the work that we're doing. And number 8, we have our key metrics. A lot of times we collect key metrics around just the types of programs and projects and products that we might have. And so, it's important also with your key metrics to make sure that you're thinking about your fundraising key metrics. So that's a whole nother ball of wax where, you have to kind of think, okay, I want to be able to raise X amount of dollars by this day. I want to connect with this many funders by this time. So, just thinking about success metrics also for your fundraising is important in key metrics. And then a second thread for that is sometimes we're able to actually hear really, really good stories about the work that we've done by collecting these metrics that we can share with our funders. And sometimes we hear stories about unexpected positive things that happen as a result of the program that we haven't collected key metrics about, and that might inform and refine how we address what types of metrics we're using to measure our work. Certain funders are going to ask for very, very rigorous monitoring and evaluation. There is another class here at the center that speaks directly to M&E and collecting those kinds of data points. I would highly recommend taking that course. But, it's really important that we pay good attention to being able to know whether or not we're being successful at achieving our goals. And finally, on our canvas is our channels. So the channels are how we reach both the beneficiaries and our potential supporters, either financial, social, or otherwise. So as we think of the different channels that we're going through, the next thought here, and you'll see me say this a lot on my reflection of your homework, the next thought is always going to be around what types of assets and materials you need to build to be able to reach these. So are you going to have to make a website? Are you going to have to make a GoFundMe site? Are you going to have to make, graphics? Are you going to have to make, many, many different things? Posters? Are you going to have whole social media campaigns and content that go along with that? Videos. So, one thing that we really often leave out of the budgets when we do them is this aspect, and this would be considered an overhead cost, right? Unless you're getting a funding from Coca-Cola and they have a certain amount, a percentage that's earmarked for you to stamp Coca-Cola on the side of every single thing that you do. All of that work to promote and share the stories of the things that you're doing, that costs money too. And it costs money in talent, and it costs money and assets and resources and tools. So that's a really important thing to think about as you're doing your budgetary planning this week. Next week, we'll be doing some just really basic but high level connection materials two-pager. Also, you can choose to work on a pitch deck or an organizational profile. And I'll also have some examples of some videos that I produced in Uganda and Kenya with projects that I've worked with to do fundraising efforts. So one thing to mention here is that oftentimes you can find students or volunteers who have advanced skills in making websites and doing social media campaigns and doing graphics and logos and videos and things like that that are looking for volunteer opportunities who would love to work on your project. And I know my project partner Drop in the Bucket that we've talked about a lot in this course through the video content, recorded content. They often source, different volunteers to do work, and we've gotten so many great assets. Is it always a great asset? No, I mean, sometimes we don't use the things that our volunteers present to us, but oftentimes we've really been able to get some really good content to share. And I would highly recommend that. And also I know there are many university students who really, really love to participate as volunteers in different impact projects. I have worked over the years with the University of Oregon and Oregon State University where I live. And I have gone in and worked with business school students and and advertising and marketing students and many, many different courses where I'll go and present and then offer one of the nonprofit or social impact, environmental impact organizations, for-profit businesses that I'm working with as a project that they can work on within their class. So many of these classes are using real world projects, real world companies or organizations to do coursework in. And I have gotten some really amazing assets from that as well. I worked with a campaigns class for marketing and journalism, and I brought an organization here locally that works on domestic violence. And the students created an amazing, very well brand aligned campaign for this organization during the Domestic Violence Month that was called That's Not Love. And so it was a really, really beautiful and well executed campaign that was very, very successful for the organization. So there's lots of different free resources from universities and small businesses, like I mentioned before, or large businesses even. I've had software engineers that have volunteered to create websites for my organizations that I've worked with. One of them did it as a trade to go on a trip to Kenya. So I mean, obviously they paid for their own plane tickets, but then when they got to Kenya, they were able to stay with an organization and visit and do safari and things like that in exchange for creating the website, which is very cool. And I've also had video production teams from my organization who have created free video for a lot of different local organizations for their fundraising efforts because they just really enjoy to do that work, and it's really fun for them to participate in something that makes an impact in their community, but aligns with where their skills and talents are. So I would encourage you guys to look into that as a resource. This second week of the course, we worked on our personas. I gave you some great examples. This is a beneficiary persona, it's actual person in the Masai Mara, but the details of this are all kind of an amalgamation or melting of many, many different individuals. And then also the same thing goes for this donor. This was based off specific donor group that I encounter a lot for my domestic violence work. And when I put together the US-based corporate foundation, which many of us are always looking for that US money, and now it isn't USAID, so we have to get a little bit scrappy about where that is going to be coming from. A great place to look is our corporate funders and corporate foundations that many corporations also have, where they use that as a funding vehicle for impact projects all around the world, mostly aligned with whatever their product is that they create or whatever their social agenda is in alignment with that brand. And I put up here how to connect because sometimes when the students produce this work, they do a really good job of empathizing with the specific organization or business, but they don't necessarily take it to the next step and think about how that organization wants to or needs to be connected with. So I think that's the most important thing here to remember is yes, 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 do a really good job with your empathy project, understand who this persona group is going to be and look like and what their preferences are, what their background is, what their issue area interests are, what their values and traits, etc. are. Geographical location, very important to put too. But don't short yourself on the how to connect because say you're very, very lucky and you have some volunteers that are stepping into your organization and you're going to have them, do some mass emailing or phone call banking or, I mean, gosh, I don't know who uses telephones anymore, but, different ways of reaching different potential funders, you want them to very quickly understand how we talk, how our organization speaks to these potential funders, and more importantly, what are they going to respond to? So how do we connect with them? If I'm someone who, and this is true of me, today I could open up my email. I probably have 727 emails in my work email. Email isn't really a thing that people do very much anymore. So, how are people connecting with me? Are they using different social channels? I don't often answer my phone to a phone number that I don't recognize. So, you'd have to ask me, how is it that I like to be connected with? Now, with my corporate foundation work, we have a specific email address. If people go on our website, they can find it. Then they can send me emails to that. When I see something come through on that thread, I know that is something that I'm going to look at. So, just knowing enough about that potential funder or investor or purchaser so you know how to connect with them so that you're not just spending a lot of time and effort crafting these beautiful emails or creating these wonderful things that they're just never going to see. We want to make sure that we are being very intentional about our own personal resources and where we're putting our efforts so that we're not wasting effort. We don't have time or money to be able to do that. Okay, so we this week or last week worked on not just the personas, but also our journeys. One thing that comes up for students a lot is that they make a potential journey for a funder that has no problems in it, right? Oh, everything worked out perfectly. I researched, I got a contact, I emailed them, they emailed me back, we had a video call. They loved what I was giving them. I sent them, a proposal or a canvas. I got some advice and, then they gave me the funding. That rarely happens. Okay. Rarely are you going to connect with a different funder or investor and have it be 100% successful. It's more like, that one needle in a haystack thing. I hate to tell you, it's going to take a lot of different efforts to be able to get those specific donors that are going to support you. Frida, I mean, I know you've been applying to scholarships. It's like you don't expect to win every single one, but that there is potentially that one out there or that, maybe 2 or 3 out there that are going to be able to help you get to where you're going. So essentially, when we're thinking through the journeys that we take, we need to think about friction points. When might investor, purchaser, donor drop off? When might they have objection? And how am I going to handle that objection? Because if we prepare ourselves when we're working through these journeys, when we prepare our teams when we're working through these journeys for those specific objections, then not only are we prepared with, how we're going to handle that, just tactically, we're prepared emotionally. And the thing that, we all know is that fundraising or, trying to generate income for these things that are very, important to us, that are the center of our work, the center of our identity sometimes, when someone says no, it can be really, really hard on our heart, on our emotions, on us psychologically. And that's real. You know, you have to understand that that psychological response to getting a no as a response is tough on us. But the one way that we can, you know, not fall into like in places where we're feeling depressed or we enter, you know, fight, flight, or freeze kind of moments is that if we've already thought of, you know, how am I going to handle this? I already have a strategy, I already have a plan to try, then we can prepare for all the different things that we might need. So there's lots of different weird things that might happen along the way. That would be a friction point. They never responded to the email, so I'm going to call them, or I'm going to go to someone else in the company, or I'm going to see if anybody in my network has worked with them before and they could make a warm introduction, or maybe I'll try them on LinkedIn, or maybe I'll try them on another platform. Um, they you know, want to have a video call with us, but when we go and have the video call, you know, they're not giving us time, they're not interested, you know, like how do I pivot from that? If they have questions about our budget, hey, what's this? But I don't have the answers. Hey, let me schedule another call or send you an email kind of with bigger details on that. Maybe they want to know something else about your organization. Maybe they say, oh, you know, our funding window just closed. It doesn't open up again for another 6 months or another year. Instead of being like, okay, thanks, bye, you know, you could say, okay, great. Well, since I have you here on the phone or on this video call, hopefully, or since we're here person to person, that's your best case scenario. Can you kind of walk me through what would make my project successful within your, you know, funding arena? Can you give me some advice around like what specifically you need me to highlight on my proposal for you to be able to decide, am I even a fit? You know, can I go over my project really fast and you can tell me? I love it when organizations do this. When they come to me and say, hey, you know, I don't know, I can't really tell specifically if this is something that you'd be willing to fund. Can you take a look at what I have? Take a look at, you know, this lean canvas or a two-pager or, you know, some other asset and let me know, does this even align to the work that you're doing? And, you know, when I review it, I'll say yes or no or maybe. But if it's a no or a maybe, I don't want to just let that person down. I'll say, hey, you know who you should go to? Or you know what? I've seen other organizations that do similar stuff be successful with these types of funders or in these areas. Or, you know, yes, we'd be interested, but we only have this amount of money and we don't like funding, you know, this thing, but we do. Like for my organization, I don't care to fund fundraising events, so like galas or, you know, different things like that. I really prefer to fund, you know, the organization and their direct work. It doesn't matter to me if the funding that we give provides support to overhead costs or just the sustainability of the organization, or if it goes to specifically the programs or program activities. That's not very common, as we both know. But, you know, for me, if you came to me and said, hey, and this happens more times than I would like to admit, but if you came to me and said, hey, you know, can you fund this fundraising event? You know, I'd say, nah, I'm not really interested in fundraising for events. I have a lot of opinions around fundraising events, especially because sometimes, especially here in the US, I think it's, you know, they're very, very expensive. So you're raising a lot of money that you don't actually put into your organization, but you're spending to have a party for a bunch of people. I think sometimes the presentations that happen there are not appropriate in terms of how they tell the story of their beneficiaries. You know, sometimes they'll invite like survivors of, you know, domestic violence or people that are actually taking part in their programs to speak or be a part of the event. I really don't care to kind of put pageantry around the actual people that we're working with. I don't think that that's appropriate or ethical to parade, you know, those people around and your beneficiaries around at some events. It's just a strange, weird thing. So I just don't enjoy those. I really want to see my money making a big impact. And for me, the way that that can happen is by providing, open-ended grants or, one-time funding into an organization, and just tell the organization that I want them to spend that money where they need it the most. A lot of funders aren't going to do that, but you want to know from your specific funder, and if you can ask them to give you advice, then that'll put you into a better position. Um, Also, sometimes they'll ask for assets that you don't have. So you need to like say, okay, sure, let me put that together for you and I'll come back. And so a lot of times, one thing that I'll say to students when they're going through a journey is, in their mind, think about what assets and resources you might need to encourage that potential funder to fund you, besides just the full-on proposal. So do I need like a quick 2-page proposal that gives the high points? Do I need to provide them with an organizational profile? And the most important thing is like none of us have great attention spans, especially now, with social media, especially like TikTok and things like that, Reels. People are ready for like that quick story that gives that quick dopamine hit, that quick, like, okay, I understand this, what's going on, quick information. So we're not going to want to go through a thing where we're having to like click on a lot of different things to learn about your organization. So remember to make it as easy as possible. So instead of, sometimes a link is great. Sometimes it's better to like just email like PDFs if it's not, if you're sharing a specific asset. So think about that user experience of the relationship that you're having. Make it easy for me to give you money. So whenever you're doing this kind of stuff, think about like, make it easy for me to learn about you, make it easy for me to give you money, make it easy for me to understand the impact that has. Easy, 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 connective, relationship building, trusting, belonging, all that stuff is super important. This is like a really intense example of a journey. You don't have to do this. You can make it as simple as possible, but I like this one because it has these little like that you can see from the emotions, like the awareness, it didn't work so well, I had to work harder, the consideration, I had to work a little bit harder, oh, the research part did well, so it shows you how it's a quick way of looking at this journey and kind of knowing what worked and what didn't work. But these are really important for our team so they understand the hard work that it goes into fundraising. And that's something often that, like if we have a nonprofit that requires us to have a board or an advisory board, sometimes, or even, sometimes our program staff, they don't understand how many steps it actually takes to cultivate a specific donor and get a donation. So I guess one thing that I don't know that I've really talked about much in any of the courses so far is that when you're reaching out to a new donor, um, sometimes you can get funding right away. Sometimes it takes a week, but there are other funders that it could take years to cultivate, and especially the larger funders. So like, we have to be planful about the way that we're thinking through funding for our work. This is the same as in any organization, any business in a sales environment. Sometimes our ramp up to actually closing a sale or closing a fundraising effort can be about 90 days, from the start of the campaign to, connecting, researching, connecting, doing all the touches that you need to do to be able to find them. It could take 90 days, best case scenario, but those larger funders, in some instances, take many years to actually connect with. And I've got many examples of where, I stayed with a donor, connected with them for many, many years. And after several years, I was able to actually secure a donation. And, over that time, built a lot of trust with them and cultivated a relationship. And the thing about that is that funders talk to each other. So, they were able to say, oh, this organization is great. They're doing da 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 da. I've been watching them for so many years. I really trust their team. Their team is very open, transparent, vulnerable. They have good business, skills. They've been doing a good job with their work. They've learned a lot. They've refined. So, some of these, sometimes it's going to take a lot longer. And for every organization that I've ever worked with, ever in my, 20 plus year career, I would also say that the efforts of fundraising take so much more time than we ever feel comfortable with. It's gonna take a lot longer than you think, or than you hope, or than you desire. And so we have to prepare ourselves also mentally and emotionally for that. It takes a long time to put all these pieces together. And so, it's not often going to be quick. Sometimes it is, and not to be a negative Nelly about it, but it does often take so much more time than we were actually comfortable with it taking when we started this. Okay. So we have less than 10 minutes. Frida, do you have any questions so far?
Yes, I
Okay,
actually have.
let's do it.
So, I was going to say, like, because I think that usually people that work in social sectors, sometimes we tend to really focus on the social impact, and sometimes we left behind the actual fundraising
Yeah.
part, that it's very important. Uh, what what tips would you give to like find that middle ground
Yeah.
between the social impact and the work you have to do to convince people to fundraise your
Yeah,
project?
yeah, I think that's the really hard part, and that's still that impact of colonization that we continue to feel that vibrates through everything that we do. The whole reason why this industry exists, right? Is that, yeah, I mean, people want to see change, they want to see the impact that's made, and they want us to do it as cheaply as possible and, as quickly as possible. And so, for me, I think that being very transparent from a business perspective too, if we present our work like it is a business to our funders as well. So I think we shouldn't always rely so heavily on, speaking about the fact that we're like either a nonprofit or hybrid organization that requires, funding, like, oh, we're a nonprofit and we're just very, very focused on the impact. We do need to, when we actually get into those rooms and speak to our funders, we do need to point out to why we're making good business decisions in the work that we're doing, and be very transparent about how we understand the cost and how that impact feeds back to that. So some of our funders are going to ask for like a cost per person, like, okay, you're building a well. How much does it cost per person in this community? How many people are in the community? How many men? How many women? How many boys? How many girls? Some of us are still living in gender constructed, spaces, but, um, they'll ask for that. And I think, that's a really hard thing. It's like, how do I actually tell you how much it costs per person for this to happen? Especially because there's so many different ways that you could look at it. And it's, that's a moving target. But that's aside from that, I would say when we go in and speak to our funders, we always have to be really transparent about the financial needs that we have. It's a lot less exciting thing to talk about with our vendors. And I think that's the hardest part, is that, like, it's embarrassing. We don't want to be asking for the money. We don't want to put, like, a lot of us don't have a lot of business acumen. We might not have taken business courses. Might not understand budgets very well. So I think that the biggest piece is to really discuss like how we've approached solving the problem from a business perspective. Like, this is how we have the organization set up. This is how many people are doing. This is why um, our work costs this much money. Because what I've really come to understand is that because we haven't been as transparent as possible in discussing our costs and really highlighting like the why around why some organizations can do something very, very cheaply and others cannot, is that it takes, a team that is worth paying. It takes resources that are worth securing to be able to actually make momentum in solving the problem. So, the example from the course, drilling wells, there's a lot of organizations that go in and drill cheap wells. And this is a great way to talk about it. You can compare and why some projects haven't worked or some organizations have failed versus why you really believe yours is going to be successful based on your business agenda. So a lot of organizations over the years, over the many, many years, have gone into communities and drilled wells. They've used cheap parts. They haven't, trained community members how to operate the wells or how to fix the wells. They haven't ensured that parts are there. They haven't come alongside it with sanitation types of programs. They haven't, with drop in the buckets example, a whole entire, uh, you know, savings and loan program was put together around that not only supported fixing the wells and securing parts for the wells and securing labor for the wells, but also created monies for community members to borrow and share with one another to start businesses, which make it even easier for the, community together to take care of that well as an asset. So, without thinking about all of those things, oftentimes those wells fail. And then what happens is then the community goes back to, drinking dirty water and, just being, continuing to go on that cycle of poverty. And so, thinking about that depth of the problem and how you're speaking about it and showing those donors that you really understand the problem, showing what your unique value proposition is, what your unfair advantage is, what your cost structure is, how you've addressed the work, how you're thinking of your organization like a business, what your business sense of those things is, helps you to really speak to why you need the fundraising also, because these things can't happen for free. And I don't know why there's this concept that cheaper is better, but one of the big things that we have to do in this course is have that really tough conversation with our funders and illuminate them to that, because it's more than just being interested in helping others or supporting a community or being interested in many, many different issues, any issue under the sun that any of us are working with. It's about being able to actually solve it. So sometimes we have to endeavor to have kind of tough conversations with those funders and kind of understand what they understand about the world. And I think for me, with so many different organizations that I could invest in, both nonprofit all the way through to for-profit organizations that are making environmental or social impact, I want to know that my money is going to be well spent. And so that's also something that you can say, it's like this, and that's why I like to use that language around investment. Like, you're making an investment in this community, and my organization is really just the way that that's passing through. And the reason why why you're going to make a bigger impact by investing in my good work is that we're going to get it done. And we're going to share with you, why. We're going to collect those good metrics. We're going to say, you've invested this much into the project, and this is the percentage of the problem that you've solved because you've chosen an organization that is really thinking about creating a solution that has those ripple effects that will uplift that community, and actually solve the problems that we've been attempting to solve for generations here. Because that's what we're all trying to do. What we want to do is have a solution and an understanding, even better, a deep understanding of the problem, so that we can actually solve the problem and not do that thing where we're going back to the community and making different solutions again and again and again and again. So, that's been one of the problems with some of our funders in the past, and even some, like I pointed to USAID projects where you had outsiders that were coming in and making solutions that just have not been effective. So, what we want is the best, most effective solutions for the work that we're doing. And so, yeah, just bringing that out on the forefront and not always relying on that, plea to help solve whatever problem that we're working on, but to be able to actually solve it. And that's where that conversation around fundraising comes.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Well, do you have any other questions before we go today?
No. That's
Okay.
it
See,
was very clear.
good. All right. Well, I hope that you have a good week. Reach out if you need anything. You know, I'm always out here. And yeah, this week is budget. So whenever you get your work in, I will grade it and give you some support. But if you have anything else that comes to mind, reach out to me anytime.
Okay. Thank
Great.
you so
Okay,
much.
then. Thank you. Have a good day, Frida. Bye.
Bye.